Welcome back to Theresa.is.Dead. My name is Theresa and I'm very much alive. And if you're new here, welcome. I have an awful garbage mouth, and if you're not into that or weird shit in general, this is not the place for you. Feel free to exit out the video here. No harm, no foul, but I'll remember our time fondly. If you want to jump straight to the overall review of the product, I'll leave a time code down below. Feel free to jump ahead. Guys, happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm actually filming this on St. Patrick's Day. However, this is going to go up tomorrow. So happy belated St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if you guys celebrate that, but here, and especially in New York, it's kind of a big fucking deal in a weird way. And everybody kind of goes crazy, ape shit, and they pretend like they have never drank a day in their life. If St. Patrick's Day falls during the middle of the week, I find myself having the worst commute coming home because it's just people just being drunk, obnoxious pieces of shit. So I was actually going to share a story about what happened in the subway the other day, but you know what? I'm going to hold that one. I figured I would share with you two embarrassing stories that happened to me on St. Patrick's Day. So the first one being when I was in my 20s, early 20s. I think I was actually before I was 21, but I digress. I got shit-faced in a bar. Shit-faced, to the point where I just didn't even know my name anymore. Being the responsible and resourceful person that I am, I decided, you know what, let me go get some Taco Bell and then let me take a cab home. Halfway into my cab ride, I started to feel a little queasy. I think it was probably all the bumps, or so that's what I told myself. Long story short, I started puking all over that cab like I was Linda Blair from The fucking Exorcist. I was puking every possible way you could possibly think of, to the point that I didn't even look like a human anymore. The cab driver at this point was screaming at me and wanting to murder me. And rightfully so, I am a piece of shit. I could have easily said, hey guy, pull over, but instead it was a As we started getting closer to my house, I asked the cab driver, hey, can you drop me off on the corner? Because I didn't want him to take me to my house. Mind you, I also gave him my full address. I am smart. I looked at the meter. I think it was like maybe 40 or 50 bucks at that point. I think I gave him like either 60 or $70, threw it at him, and then fleed the cab like a fucking maniac. I ran down my alleyway, tried to hop a 3-foot fence, which when you're drunk, not really that smart. I wound up landing on my back like a turtle and just did this for about 10 minutes. I think my brother finally heard me and got me into the house. Now while all this is going on, the cab driver then comes up to the front of my house and starts pounding on my door and ringing the doorbell because he wants more money to clean up the mess, and rightfully so. I did leave a crime scene back there. Lo and behold, while I was cowering in the basement, my grandmother answered the door and threatened to beat the shit out of him. My grandmother told him to go fuck himself. So then my grandmother found me cowering in the basement, told me I was a fucking idiot, and to go to bed. So that's why I don't go to the city and drink on St. Patrick's Day. The other story I have for you guys is about 8 years ago. Me and my friend were polishing off a bottle of Jameson. Yep. And we decided afterwards that we were really hungry. We decided to go to a sushi restaurant. So about 3 sushi rolls later and a pint of sake, I decided to go home. When I was in bed, I realized I had to throw up, but I couldn't bring myself to get up out of my bed. So what did I do? I literally just turned next to me and threw up in my bed. And then I just rolled over. In the middle of the night, however, I decided to roll myself like a pig in shit, and I had puke all over me. I'll tell you what though, nothing's more sobering than pulling sushi chunks out of your hair on March 18th. Yeah. Anyway, those are my fondest St. Patrick's Day memories. On today's video, we're going to be talking about Makeup Maniacs, the Green Goddess palette, which is this little guy right here. Unfortunately, I was looking at their website and there is really no description. Please know that this palette retails for about $28. It's limited quantities. It's currently sold out and I don't think it's going to be restocked. So I apologize if you wanted to get this palette, you can't. However, Makeup Maniacs actually has a shitload of palettes on their website. So I'm going to leave their link down below. Feel free to go check them out. They have some of my favorite palettes, like the Candy Underground palette, the Toast and Jam. Actually, that's limited edition as well. They also have these beautiful quads. They have a lot of good stuff, so definitely go check them out. So with that said, here are some of the swatches for the palette. So for $28, what exactly do you get? You get this beautiful palette right here, and as you can see, the first thing we'll notice from previous palettes is that this bitch got a facelift. And I have to say that I really do love the new font, that their tagline now is also a part of it, a glow for every goddess. Just aesthetically, it looks really pleasing. Don't get me wrong, I do love the old packaging because one, blood splatter speaks to me on a lot of levels, which sounds really weird when you think about it, but whatever. Anyway, I really do love the old packaging, but I am very, very happy for them that they received a facelift. So keep in mind, this review is actually actually going to be of the last restock of this palette, which the first two restocks, I think it sold out so fast I didn't even have time to purchase this palette. I think a limited quantities was only available, I want to say like in the nighttime one night, with the exception of that this palette was going to be different from the previous palette because this shade down here was actually supposed to be like a light khaki color. So Makeup Maniacs did mention when purchasing this last restock that you are going to be getting this variant of the palette. Let's talk a little bit about this palette. First thing you notice is that this actually is a sticker, which compared to the previous palettes that are literally just printed on, my only complaint with this is that the sticker is actually kind of tacky feeling. I've been trying to kind of like wipe off the front of the palette so it doesn't have this weird tackiness to it, but it still does, unfortunately. I'm not a fan of the sticker. I love the imagery of this. I just almost wish that this image was just printed on the package, say like this palette, as opposed to just placing a sticker on it. From the back of it, you'll have a list of ingredients, as well as noting that this palette is cruelty-free and I believe made of recyclable materials because there's a little man throwing something in a garbage can, so I'm assuming that means recyclable. And this is good for 2 years, which is really nice because most eyeshadow palettes are only good for 1 year. With that said, when you open her up, what do you exactly get? You get this beautiful mirror, which I'm going to keep down right here because I don't want to blind you guys. Since I don't really have the true description of things, and this is kind of what I'm going from in my mind, I believe 6 of the shadows are mattes. One of the shadows down here is technically a matte with some glitter on top of it. You have these 3 pressed glitters right here, and the remainder of the shades are these beautiful shimmer colors, which are these guys right there. So you have like a nice array of stuff, and it's kind of divided in a way where it reminds me of the Gemini palette, where you kind of have your greens on one side and like your browns on the other. Stylistically, I think this palette is very, very pretty. Let's talk about these glitter shades right here in the middle. Personally, I get really nervous when it comes to glitter shades, only because my eyes are incredibly sensitive. So I try to be very, very careful when placing this on. I don't put it in anywhere near the lower lash line. I try to keep it right dead center in the middle of the lid, or maybe kind of going towards the inner lid. These are really interesting because one, they look stunning in the pan. That's number one. Number two, they're actually quite comfortable, which I was honestly a little nervous about trying, only because I like glitter, but glitter doesn't like me. And usually when it's something like this, where it's kind of pressed glitter and it's like chunks of glitter, I'm always nervous of it getting into my eye and causing me to go blind. These are very interesting swatch. This one up here on the top, it looks really nice on my finger, but yeah, nothing comes up on that guy, which is unfortunate. So I'm actually going to show you the second one here. Yeah, you see that one's better. And then the third one down here, that guy right there. Okay, so here are the 3 guys right here. This one being the top shade, this one being the middle, and this one being the bottom. This one I would say is by far the weakest one. This one did swatch better than this one. This one kind of spoke to me a little bit more today, so that's why I have this one on my lid. Out of all 3 formulas, this is definitely the more firm one out of the bunch, and maybe that's why the swatches are not as good as these two. I actually technically hit pan on this little guy, just like dipping around and playing around with the brush. It's so soft that you kind of have to be mindful of that. What I do like about this product is, one, is that it doesn't feel heavy on my lid. It's actually kind of weightless, which is really nice. I didn't use any glitter glue as a primer to my lid. I just used concealer, and I have to say that it's actually sticking pretty good. However, you can see that there is some slight transfer, but I think that's because I have hooded eyes. Had I used some glitter glue, I think it would stay put, but I just wanted to see how it would look on its own. And on its own, I think it looks really pretty. So with that said, I actually don't mind this formula. I think it's actually pretty comfortable to wear, which is saying a lot considering I don't really fuck with that much glitter on my face. The only thing I will say, besides probably needing more of a tacky base to kind of make sure things stay in place, that you do experience some kick up and fallout, because all over here it looked like Tinkerbell just shit on my face. So let's talk about the shimmer shades in this guy. The shimmers are probably my favorite part of this whole palette, if I'm going to be honest. I want to say for the most part I had no problem with most of the shimmers, although I did find that a finger application was probably the best application. When I used them dry, they looked a little more dull. However, when I use a little bit of setting spray, it definitely brightened up the look, which is definitely something that's very common with shimmer shades. However, this shade in particular right here, for example, when applied with setting spray, actually feels like a fucking chemical burn on your face. Not as bad as the Menagerie Cosmetics one, where that straight felt like fucking fire on my eyes. This did have a slight burning irritation, but did subside after a minute or so. Not the end of the world, and this is something that I have experienced, and I'm finding that it's way more common these days, so I'm not getting as scared as I was in the past. It's still not a pleasant feeling. So I noticed noticed for that one, I definitely tried to stick more with a finger application, and then I didn't experience any sort of issues with that. So I found that using a finger actually was the best payoff for the Shimmer Shades. There is a little bit of kick up, there is a little bit of fallout. Some of the Shimmer Shades kind of come off a little bit crumbly, not like ABH crumbly, like a little bit less than that. But again, finding that if you stick to a finger, you minimize the risk of having any sort of fallout or anything like that. So for these, definitely fingering yourself is way better. So finally, let's talk about the mattes in the sky. So here's the deal with the matte eyeshadows. I feel like some of them are better than others. You know, for example, this shade right here, I had no issue with. This shade right here, I had no issue with, and this shade down here, I had no issue with. The only thing I will say about these three shadows is that while they are incredibly pigmented, they're also incredibly messy, where I found that I was battling with a fucking makeup wipe the other day because it just kept turning my whole face green. Rightfully so, this is a green eyeshadow palette, duh, no shit Sherlock. I'm happy that I did my makeup before my base and all that good stuff, because otherwise I'd be cleaning up green shit for days. This one's fine, you know, whatever, this is literally the color of my skin, and this is the kind of shade I feel like that where you either set your lid with or you start diffusing harsh lines and all that good stuff, and I had no issue with this one. This shade, however, this one kind of seemed a little darker in the pan, however on my finger, not a lot of pigment there. This shade probably the worst offender, which really sucks because this is the kind of shade that I was really excited about. This one has no, doesn't have any pigment, okay? So yep. I found especially with these two shadows right here that going in with the fluffy brush, you're not going to have any sort of pigment. You have to go in with more of a packer or a denser brush, but still you're not going to get nearly as much pigment as it looks like in the pan, which really sucks. This shade over here obviously has more pigment than its brothers and sisters over here, but the glitter in this one fucks my eye up. I was trying to think, like, why am I having a reaction to this palette? I haven't had any sort of reactions to Makeup Maniacs in the past, so kind of noticing that I was getting a little bit of eye irritation and the pigment was a little bit off, I started looking more into the ingredients, and there's actually a couple of ingredients in this one that are not in the other palettes that I own, so I'm kind of targeting those ingredients as the things that are irritating my eyes. Sucks because this is a really beautiful palette and I really had high hopes for this, especially considering I love Makeup Maniacs formula and I have no issues with them, and I just think they're an awesome fucking brand. So do I think this palette was worth it? No, not necessarily. I think with just like the kind of the slight eye irritation that I'm experiencing with this palette and the kind of the inconsistency in formulas, this is definitely not my favorite palette from this brand. I think if you are interested in trying something from this brand, I would recommend getting either their mini quads or the Underground Candy palette if this is still available. Now I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down below if you have this palette or if you are interested in trying anything from this brand. If you are, please definitely look into my recommendations of the Underground Candy palette as well as the quads. You will not go wrong with those. All right, let me know down below how you feel about it. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it as always. Feel free to like, comment, hit that subscribe button. It's free. And hit that bell icon for notification on all my future posts. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchats, out in the street, out in life, whatever. And I'll see you little pumpkins later. Bye.